Here's how nonprofits raise money for just operations. Okay, first and foremost, number one, it's time to bust the overhead myth once and for all. It's that people are somehow upset if nonprofits pay their employees a living wage or have office expenses. If someone gives $1 to an organization, they cannot possibly expect that 100% of that dollar gets spent exactly on the thing that they do. In some cases, that's true, but for the most part, we're looking at anywhere from 10 to 25% of that dollar being spent to actually operationalize and be overhead, quote unquote, to the charity itself. And this is a totally reasonable thing. And charity's saying, well, if we are public about this, or we talk about how much we pay our people, or we talk about the wages and benefits, people will stop giving. And we found that this is just simply not true. Nonprofits that pay a fair living wage and do have overhead are totally fine. So we need to start by just busting the myth that overhead is a problem and we should avoid it at all costs, and everyone in a nonprofit should work for free. It just can't be that way with large, well-run organizations. Number two is to draw a straight line from dollars to impact. Here is where charities mess up. They say, we need dollar because dollar will buy us new building. And new building is good, or not even new building. Say instead of it's a new building, it's even more operational. We need dollar because dollar gives us new staff person. We need new staff person. And they're like, well, why do you need a new staff person? They're like, oh, well, new staff person, help person in need. New staff person is good. We're gonna draw, this is my drawing a heart. This is the best I can do. Instead of saying we need a new staff person and we're gonna use the new staff person to do something in need, we just skip that part. We go right from the dollar all the way here. Yes, this step exists, but we just wanna skip it. Straight line, I know this is a curved line, but imaginary straight line from dollar all the way to the actual impact that the gift has. Don't talk about how the money impacts your charity or how it will help your charity. Talk about how the dollar will help the people that you serve. Number three is launch a campaign with multiple pillars. Used to be the case that a capital campaign was for just that, capital, something that you could spend money on, often tangible, often bricks and mortar like a building or a new wing or something that's physical that you can buy. Really popular and increasingly popular over the last 10 years are what's called comprehensive, is the buzzword that people use now, campaign with multiple pillars. And those pillars might be operations, it might be some capital, and it might even be some endowment, some funds that you put away for the future. And we have these different buckets, and the total amount that we're gonna raise is 10 million, and they're gonna be split among these three buckets. And we're able to spend some money on operations, we're able to spend some money on the capital, the new thing that we're trying to buy, and we're trying to put some money aside from the future, like we would save for retirement if this was an individual person, and we're able to spread it out, and donors are totally fine with this. We have good data now to show that it does not hurt giving. So if you're thinking about a comprehensive project or a campaign where you need to pay for your operations as well, launch a comprehensive campaign with multiple pillars. It's all under one umbrella. You add up the amounts you need in each bucket, and that's your campaign total. Number four is to get specific and spotlight one tangible project or outcome, one goal that's on the other side of the money. For example, this year we were able to help 500 kids. There are another 1,000 who need school supplies. If we're able to raise $180,000, we can outfit all 1,500 with school supplies. So if you have this one project, maybe you do a lot of different things, but you pick the one project with one tangible outcome and you focus on it. Say that $180,000 that you need is not just for the books themselves. It is the people to go to the schools and actually hand out the supplies. It's the tutors to actually work with the kids. A lot of that stuff falls under quote unquote operations, but if you can kind of carve it out into one big program of like, yes, the program supports all kinds of things, but operations could be the staff that we need to implement the program, and that's still part of the program. So you have this one tangible project, outcome, or program, but you can piggyback these other expenses that you have onto the program and raise money for the whole thing at once. It's just about how you count it, and donors are, again, totally fine with this in most cases. Number five is recurring giving. If you're looking for a boost to your monthly operations to have reliable, consistent income, the best way to do that is to just ask for reliable and consistent income. Maybe a donor gives us something a little extra or special on a capital campaign. Maybe they have a planned gift or something that they do. But the more people that you can have giving $50 or $100 or $150 a month, just with no end, and they're just giving these amounts, and you can get, say, 100 people do that. That's a pretty good salary for your organization that you can push towards operations. A lot of organizations, what they'll choose to do is take their recurring giving program and have that just cover their operational expenses. It's like, we're just gonna delete these expenses that we know we're gonna have every month because we have this equally offsetting level of people who give $50 a month. The best way to push recurring giving is just to talk about it, is to make sure that it's obvious on your website when you talk to donors, to have the conversation. You have to make it public and draw attention to the fact that you just have this program. You can do recognition and things that incentivize people to continue to do it. But the most important thing is just set up the program so that it exists, and there are recognition perks at different levels, and hopefully people will over time grow into this program. But if you want recurring operational money, a lot of times, all you have to do is ask. Hey, thanks for checking out our video. If you're getting value out of this but would like something more personalized, you can book 30 minutes with one of our experts to see if you qualify for our support services. Link below in the description. Number 6 is largely in the same vein, which is multi-year pledges. Saying instead of paying this $100,000 this year, you can split this $100,000 into 3 different tax years. And you don't even have to pay the same amount. You can say, hey, donor, if $100,000 seems like a lot, we would love for you to consider pledging $100,000. You can do 20 this year, you can do 30 the second year, or 50 the third year, or mix those up however you want. You want to wait till you have a good year in the stock market or the economy is a little better, you have more taxes you're trying to get rid of, you can switch these around, and that's totally fine. But what this does is allows you to split it up so that you can use some of the money for one thing and some of the money for operations and some of the money for endowment, the same way that you split up the kind of the multi-pillar to give you a bigger bucket to work from. The caveat here is just make sure you're transparent, saying, hey, we'd love to have you give us $100,000 to fund this program. What that does is you can talk about staff and overhead and materials and all the different small components that are needed to run this program. But in order to do that, costs a little bit more money, and that's a lot easier to stomach, and it's a lot easier to pitch to donors if you give them the option to pay over multiple years. So if you don't have a program where you can set up multi-year pledges for donors, huge opportunity missed. Make sure that you're at least talking to your big donors about this option. Number 7 is, of course, to bring naming opportunities into the mix. Now, for naming opportunities, we want to make sure that we're still starting those at a major gift amount. For most organizations, that's a $50,000 pledge and up. Some organizations elect to name things for $25,000. We would say definitely don't ever go anything less than that. You're just going to run out of stuff to name. You're also setting a bad precedent for permanent quote unquote recognition. If there's a program or an operational funding piece that you need money for, you can say it's $100,000 a year. You can say this costs us $100,000 a year to run. It's overhead, it's operational expenses, it's money that we just burn. If you're willing to name this program, the Jake Lyons whatever program, you can name it for 5 years for $500,000. You're gonna pay $100,000 for 5 years, so that's a one-time or a multi-year pledge. $500,000 gift, again, this is a large example, you can do this with smaller examples as well, and that's the Jake Lyons program for the next 5 years. At the end of that, Jake Lyons will get the option to renew that gift at the same level, he'll kind of get first right of refusal, and if he doesn't, it goes back out into the community and someone else can name it. But using naming opportunities to actually name programs, not just buildings. You can endow positions, you can endow funds, you can endow different operational things. Just kind of bend them towards the impact, the things that are mission facing, and they become a lot more appealing to your donor base. Number 8 is to tell back of house stories. You want to feature the IT person who gets in at 6 a.m. and has worked at your organization for years. You want to talk about your finance director who started as an intern 10 years ago and has worked her way up and is now the chief financial officer of your organization. These are people who aren't necessarily frontline facing or right at mission facing. They kind of support the operations of the group, but kind of humanizing and say, hey, these are people too, and what they do is really important to our mission. And putting that out on social media, putting it in your annual report, just giving opportunities to feature people who've given their lives to your organization really helps encourage people saying, yep, I do see how the overhead or the operations piece is important, and that allows you to weave it into your fundraising message. So if you've never featured these people, I promise you they'd be ecstatic to be heard and to be featured and to be thanked for all of their work. So it's a really nice way to honor them as well. Number 9 is to lead with board gifts. It is imperative that your board all give at a meaningful level. Again, we always say don't set the amount at like everyone has to give or get $1,000. The people who can't afford it are gonna feel stretched and like they don't belong. The people who can give way more than 1,000 will just give 1,000. You're leaving a ton of money on the table. So you're kind of losing on both ends. We instead say, give a meaningful gift. What is meaningful is different for every person. So you can kind of announce, hey, we're gonna ask everybody for a meaningful gift. Hopefully it's already in your bylaws and the board knows this going in. Also, they're serving on a nonprofit board. What do they think is gonna happen? Hopefully that's pretty clear going in. But you have private conversations with each of them and about their individual giving, and that could account for any amount of money. If you find that donors are a little gun shy about supporting your operations and your back end and your overhead, maybe that's something that the board covers, saying, hey, this is gonna be 5% of our expenses or 10% of our expenses, but the board is going to commit to, as a unit, cover that so that the more marketable things, the more marketable expenses, the more program and mission facing things can be instead reserved for our community donors. The board's gonna support either way. They see the financials, they see how important everybody's job is and why the ops support everything that you do. And it's a wonderful way to kind of get them to cover that piece where you can move everything else out of the community. So not the be all end all. Some board members may not want to do that, but board giving is important already, so you may as well have the conversation and see if that's a tactic that might work for you. Number 10 is donor retention. It costs 5 to 7 times more money to find a new donor than just to keep your existing ones. So if you think it's expensive to take time to steward and retain your donors, it is far more expensive to not do that. As soon as you've captured someone and you start to form a relationship, it's so often that we accidentally just kind of treat it as a transaction and kind of ignore them, saying, oh, they've already given a gift. We don't need to talk to them anymore. Or it's very, very important at that point to say, you know what? That we need to treat them like donors because they are already donors and they're also now our future donors if we are able to steward them correctly and share updates about the mission, talk about the impact, treat them like human beings, and let them know that we are also human beings. Being able to keep your donor retention up tends to relax donors about the type of programs that they'll give money to. Some donors are really specific. They're like, I'm gonna designate towards this program every year. It's my favorite thing that y'all do. I wanna support that. A lot of other times, as donors give year after year, they start to trust you and your organization and your leadership more, and they're a little bit more lax about where that money goes. So they may be more inclined to give to a more operational type fund, and just having more money in general also makes that much easier. So this kind of helps on both sides by increasing your overall revenue and also increasing donor trust so you can have a little more flexibility on how you spend those gifts. And finally, number 11 is to remember, capital expansion isn't everything. This isn't necessarily an arms race, and just because your organization isn't growing exponentially from a building and staffing standpoint does not mean that you're failing. You don't have to be growing to be doing a wonderful job with your mission. So when we think campaign and fundraising, if it's always going to capital, again, this is just an arms race. A lot of times with capital expansion, with new programs, with new buildings, our expenses increase as well, as do the overhead across the board. So if we're able to fundraise both for operations and sustainability and for capital when we need it, and we can even add a third one in there for endowment, again, that kind of nest egg for the future, it's really, really important that we can help message that so that people understand like, hey, we're fine to grow. We're gonna grow responsibly so that we can stick around and continue to serve those people that we serve from now well into the future. All right, I hope some of these tips about fundraising specifically for operations was helpful for you. If you'd like additional help in actually implementing some of these strategies, you can head over to pridephilanthropy.com and click that Let's Chat button. Allows you to speak with one of our team directly to see if we can help you out. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.